Fill up the tanks, we're hitting the road. The Chargers certainly are. Located on the West Coast, you know you're going to have some flights. But one to start the season that really adds to their season high total. Some 6,100 miles between LAX and Sao Paulo, Brazil. 37,000 miles in total by nearly 3,000 miles, the most of any team. And you take a look, these coastal teams know what it is to travel, and then you add in some internationals, we better be ready for the road. Always at home when Bryant McFadden is here to offer his thoughts. Mac, before we go to LA specifically, talk to me about travel in the league and maybe how it's evolved from your heyday and what was expected and came with that travel, and what these players experience now in travel.
Well, the flight accommodations are more comfortable. You know, we flew extremely in unique style and fashion, but nowadays it's revamped. It has intensified in terms of making sure your players are as comfortable as possible, especially for some of the long travel games like the Chargers they're going to embark in on. And for us as players, when I play with the Pittsburgh Steelers, anytime we travel from the East Coast to the West Coast, it's usually around a 4 or 5 hour drive, flight, depending on where you're going. But for us, it only felt like 2 hours because we embarked in card games. So from the time we took off to the time we land, we were involved in card games and didn't realize we were actually in the air for 4 or 5 hours. Now, you had some of the guys that would listen to some soft music, you know, or R&B, whatever the case may be, something melodic, and just take a nap. But for most of us, we found ways to entertain ourselves. So the travel is not as big of a deal as some people make it out to be, especially if you're an experienced player. And when you look at the Chargers, that's a team that has a nice mixture of youth and experienced players. Also, the head coach and Coach Harbaugh. This isn't his first time being in this rodeo. He's been around the block for quite some time, so he understands that he knows exactly how to get his guys mentally prepared for all the travel they're getting ready to embrace.
You and your partner got the good hand. You tell the pilot, do a couple more spins.
Don't land just yet.
About to take this pod.
You're not ready to land.
37,000 miles is what we have on the Chargers, that 6,100-mile trip to start the season in Brazil. When you look at what it means, I know you gave us a sense of the team makeup and how that's going to affect how you deal with the travel, but is there a point of diminishing return where you're just in the sky a little bit too long?
Yeah. Now, the thing about the Chargers schedule, we keep it up real quick, guys, for us. When you look at traveling to New York to play the Giants, usually what we usually see, Joe, when teams travel across country, they usually have 2 games across country where they actually can stay. But with the Chargers, they travel to New York, then go back home to Washington just to travel all the way back down to Miami. That's something that we usually don't see with NFL teams whenever they have to make a cross-country game. Usually it's 2 games in that same preferred destination where you usually stay over instead of traveling back just to travel back again. So that's something that's kind of rare. But like I said, Coach Harbaugh clearly will have a game plan in place for his team to be at their best, knowing they have to make these cross-country games.
Such as life in LA, the second most traveled miles will be
the Rams.
Their neighbors in that city, in the Rams. When you look at the makeup of that team, certainly one that's been presented to us in primetime stages here in the recent past, and certainly one that's used to the travel, but some different pieces in LA this coming season. And Matthew Stafford is getting older by the day, as we all are. The importance of this season and this schedule to keep that travel trajectory in the direction you want it.
Well, the thing about the Rams, when you talk about their head coach, you know how much I've raved about Sean McVay. I think he's the second best head coach in the National Football League behind Andy Reid, based on his consistency and being able to do more with less. But the expectations for the Rams, at the bare minimum, is being a playoff caliber team. You talked about Matthew Stafford. Yes, he's older, but I have yet to see any decline in terms of his production and his leadership on and off the football field. Yes, they lost Cooper Kupp, but in comes Davante Adams, who had another 1,000-yard season a year ago with 2 organizations. Not to mention, look at some of the health adversity they face. You lost both wide receivers throughout the course of the season. You lost key contributors on the defensive side. And oh, by the way, your best player walked away in Aaron Donald. that has been an afterthought because they still found ways to be extremely successful without Aaron Donald in uniform. Now, year 2 without Aaron Donald, their defense should be more acclimated, not to mention some of the up-and-coming stars that we saw a year ago. Yeah. They have more experience under their belt as well. It's a unique game because you look at week 1 for the Rams, they're playing against a playoff caliber team that's well coached in the Houston Texans. 2 teams right there. When you look at week 1 matchups, I know we haven't really highlighted that particular game, but that's a nice game to watch because we do respect either side, not to mention great quarterback play from both sides. And like I said, both teams have the ability to be a really, really good team and most importantly, get into the playoffs. So you look at the first game, and then of course, rookie quarterback Tennessee, Cam Ward comes to town. And then you got another star-studded game against the Philadelphia Eagles, a rematch from what we watched in the NFC Championship game from a year ago.
Had that divisional round.
A divisional round.
I got you.
Yeah.
Taking a look, though, I'm fixated on that first one. I'm just picturing Jared Verse and no Laramie Tunsil and what C.J. Stroud's going to do. And we got to figure out that offensive line for Houston because too much talent there for their quarterback to have been under siege the way he was a year ago, and some young talent on that defensive line of L.A. that has no problem flying the friendly skies.
Exactly.
The Cincinnati Bengals have no such problem. The least travel of any team in the NFL this season, just over 8,000 yards. That's
Joe Burrow, don't do it. Not yet.
It's a good day for Jamar Chase. 8,000 miles, 8,753 to be exact. And this is very much a function of the AFC North being such a tightly knit division in terms of distance traveled. You're going to get 6 games with those teams, and you know where you're going to be, and you're not going to be very far. I know we don't make a big deal about too much travel. Is this an advantage to not travel barely at all?
I wouldn't say that for this particular team because traveling hasn't been an issue for Cincinnati in years past. The issue for Cincinnati has been getting off to horrible starts.
Traveling to the
That's
stadium.
why the month of September, for me, when you look at their games in the month of September, they're overly important because what we've seen from Joe Burrow, what we've seen from Cincinnati, 0-3 starts, 1-4, 2-4, 2-3, nothing above 500. For some reason, they're sleeping at the wheel when week 1 is here. Can they get up to a better start? Because you remember, with everything that was circulating with their program a year ago, they still was almost there of finding a way to sneak into the playoffs with everything that was happening. But if they gotten off to a better start, along with finishing the way they finished in 2024, they might have snuck into the playoffs. So can they get up to a better start? Because if you look at the first game of the season, I think it's against Cleveland, right?
That's your Patriots from last year. It's the exact situation from a year ago. Don't get slapped in the mouth week 1 and you make the playoffs.
Yes, last year when we looked at Cincinnati's schedule, getting ready for that New England game against a rookie head coach and Jacoby Brissett as the starting quarterback, we all said that should be a win. Well, they proved us right once again in terms of getting up to a slow start. So if you're Cincinnati, who cares about the travel and the lesser miles that you will be embarking in compared to some other organizations? It's about getting off to a better start. That's a winnable matchup. Week 1, Cleveland. Week 2, that should be a winnable matchup as well. I understand there's a new change in the guard of the guard there in Duval, but that should be a winnable game. So those are the most important things that I'm factoring in with Cincinnati. Can we see a different thing happen for them in getting off to a faster start in the first quarter of the season?
They won't have to go far, and hopefully they won't have to go far in the calendar to find themselves as they have in years past. Bryant McFadden, on the road or at home, he's always good.